You're terrified of meeting the truest version of yourself, not because it's impossible, but because it demands everything you've been avoiding. If you keep choosing comfort, you'll never meet the person who could have changed your whole life. Wake up now and that other you is waiting and time is not patient. You stand in front of the mirror and think you know the person who looks back. You know their habits, their disappointments, their small comforts. You think you understand the contours of that face because you have lived inside it for years. But behind that familiar reflection there is another face. A stranger you have met only in flashes. A quieter confidence, a cleaner moral courage, an unembarrassed clarity. You are terrified of meeting that stranger, not because that other you is cruel or demanding, because becoming them would require dismantling the scaffolding your life is built on. This fear is not mystical. It's practical and it's merciless. The brain is an institution of conservation. It will favor what keeps you safe in the short term. The habits, identities, roles, the private compromises that sustain your current life. These are the small architectures that have kept you functioning. To become the person you secretly admire is to take a wrecking bar to those structures. It is to risk being socially smaller, temporarily less certain, and morally exposed. So the instinct is to hide. You toss distractions at the itch of longing. You perform busyness, counsel caution, manufacture reasons. You treat the inner summons as a problem to solve later. Later becomes the grave of possibility. We mistake this avoidance for prudence. I can't change everything at once, we say, and it sounds wise. But prudence becomes cowardice when it is a permanent posture. You pay a hidden price for every deferred becoming. Each postponement consolidates the smaller self a little more. The stranger in the mirror becomes a fading apparition, and one day you wake and cannot even imagine the face that once visited you in dreams. The fear of potential is more intimate than fear of failure. You understand failure. It is a discrete event. Potential, by contrast, implies a moral reorientation. It asks, who are you willing to disappoint to become more? It asks, which comforts will you surrender? It asks, which identities will you let die? These questions trigger grief because we choose identity over becoming. We choose the known story because a story, however small, is better than the vertigo of authorship. But the stranger in the mirror is not your enemy. That image is truth because it holds the promise of integrity. The person you resist is the one who acts without rationalizing, who chooses work over excuse, who speaks truth instead of rehearsing acceptable lies. Meeting that self will feel harsh in the beginning because the cost of honesty is exposure. You will lose friends, routines, easy approvals. You will have to sit with your real aims and be willing to fail forward. Yet paradoxically, the losses are temporary, and the gains are structural. The stranger you fear will not demand more of you than your soul already suspects it can give. It will ask simply that you stop lying to yourself. How do people make the leap? Not with theatrics, not with grand vows, but with a moral micro-decision. The willingness to act in alignment with a truth that terrifies you. The steps are simple and surgical. First, name the stranger. Describe them. What do they value? How do they spend their morning? What would they say to the friend who asks about their dreams? Naming is a kind of ritual. It brings the apparition from dream into probity. Once named, the stranger becomes less monstrous and more human, and fear loses some of its power. Next, practice small proofs. The future self doesn't require a seismic change. It requires evidence. Evidence is not motivation. It's repetition. Write the first paragraph of the book you always say you'll write. Ask the hard question in a conversation you've been avoiding. Pay attention to the tiny act you perform even when no one is watching. Each proof is a stitch that binds the stranger into your daily anatomy. The nervous system, like any habit machine, learns by repetition. Do one honest thing daily and watch the fabric of your present life begin to accommodate a different heart. Another crucial element is moral courage. The willingness to disappoint for the sake of truth. You will disappoint people. You will disrupt rhythms. You will endure the discomfort of mismatch. That is the cost of the meeting. Let the losses teach you. Let them reveal who loved an appearance more than your real flourishing. That knowledge is clarifying and liberating. Finally, cultivate compassion for the smaller self you are abandoning. The person who's been keeping you safe deserves tenderness. They did a job, but they can't be your permanent steward. You will need to let them rest, to thank them, and then to step past them. Meeting the stranger in the mirror is a moral summons. It will ask you to trade immediate comfort for a life that leans more
fully toward truth.
You will be afraid. That's not a sign to stop. It's a sign you're approaching what matters. The stranger's gaze is patient. It waits not to condemn but to welcome. And once you take the first honest step, the terror diminishes and the work becomes real joy. Because you are finally becoming the person who can live the life you once only imagined. Comfort is subtle. It does not announce itself with fanfare. It slips into your day as small concessions. The extra hour of sleep instead of practice. The uncritical acceptance of a role because it pays. The polite silence instead of a necessary confrontation. The addiction to easy likes and the habit of scrolling. Each concession is small and defensible. Together they compound into a life that looks fine from the outside and feels shallow on the inside. We underprice the cost of comfort because the immediate pain is avoided. You do not have to feel the sting of growth, but costs accrue invisibly. They are interest on an identity debt. The more you save yourself from short discomfort, the more you pay in lost momentum and unactualized potential. Comfort functions like an addictive currency. The brain learns the route of least resistance and defaults to it. Habits form pathways in the neural architecture. The easier route becomes the path of least friction. That is why people can talk about dreams with unusual eloquence and then choose ease every single day. The rhetoric is not the problem. The habitual choices are. You can be rhetorically ambitious and experientially inert. The slow economics of comfort are devastating because they masquerade as prudence. Not now becomes maybe never. I'll wait until conditions are perfect becomes the script of perpetual postponement. The mind offers rationales that feel robust, responsibilities, timing, readiness. But these rationales are often elegant lies. They preserve current equilibrium while stealing the future. To see the cost, imagine a life where you chose the uncomfortable path once a week. A single hour of focused practice. A single hard conversation. A single small public vulnerability. Do this consistently for a year, and watch how your inner landscape changes. Momentum is the compound interest of courageous acts. Small discomfort invested steadily becomes the currency of transformation. This is why rituals matter. Because they institutionalize small loss for large gain. Choose a threshold. A daily micro-act you will honor regardless of mood. Make it non-negotiable. Rig the environment in favor of hard choice. Remove easy comforts that seduce you. Place friction on the path of distraction. The architecture of your life speaks to what you value. If your environment is neutral, you will default to ease, designed for becoming. Another tactic is to reorient your definitions of safety. Safety is not the absence of challenge. It is the alignment with honest purpose. True safety emerges when your actions reflect who you claim to be. People mistake the temporary relief of avoidance for long-term safety. Real safety is moral and structural. You live in a way that can be defended by truth, not by convenience. And finally, practice grief for what comfort costs. Grief is not failure. It is acknowledgement. When you choose to leave a comfortable pattern, you might lose approval, friendship, or ease. Accept that grief arrives and then pursue the clarity that follows. Loss is part of the transaction, but loss traded for authenticity yields far richer returns. Comfort feels like a harmless harbor. It is the slow sand that will sink your ship unless you stiffen your spine and choose the offshore wind. The cost is real, and the only remedy is disciplined. Repeated acts of small discomfort that add up into a lifetime of meaning. There is a ledger inside you that no accountant can manage. It isn't financial. It is moral and psychological. It records the promises you made to yourself and the ones you quietly reneged on. The vows to try, to speak, to create, to love boldly. Each deferred promise compounds into identity debt. Unlike financial debt, identity debt erodes trust in the most important relationship you will ever have, the one with yourself. Identity debt accrues quietly. It begins with small betrayals. I'll begin next week. I'll speak up later. I'll repair when I have time. Each postponement reinforces a narrative. You are not someone who follows through. Over time, your self-image conforms to that behavior. Identity is not declared. It is practiced. When your practices contradict your claimed values, cognitive dissonance corrodes confidence. The internal voice shifts from encouragement to mockery. Repaying identity debt requires brutal honesty. You must first audit your promises. Take paper and list the commitments you've made to, yourself over the years, big and small. Don't moralize. Simply inventory. Which promises are still active? Which were deferred? Which were never yours but felt necessary? seeing the ledger in black and white, punctures denial and opens the possibility of repair. Repair is both practical and moral. Practically, choose one small overdue promise and complete it this week. The repair doesn't have to be grand. It has to be real. If you promise to write 1 page. If you promise to apologize, call. If you promise to practice, show up for the shortest session you can sustain. The point is to produce evidence that you are trustworthy to yourself. Morally, you must issue a new covenant. No more stealth defaults. Announce accountability. Make your promises public to one reliable witness who will hold you to the small acts. Accountability is not shaming. It is scaffolding. It helps the nervous system know that the future self matters, because others will measure it. Identity debt also requires a reorientation of language. Stop saying "I'll try" and switch to "I will." Try is a permission to retreat. Will is a moral posture. The subconscious reads verbal commitments as contracts. Small changes in grammar trigger large shifts in action. Another key is repair rituals. A weekly ledger check. A short ritual of completion for tasks finished. A visible board where promises appear and are crossed out. These rituals make the abstract real and create a culture of fidelity inside your day. Over months, these tiny repairs rewire who you are. And finally, forgive the past. Identity debt is not a sentence. It's a diagnosis. The person who failed yesterday can be the person who makes amends today. The fact you have debt means you care at some level. Use that care as fuel. Repayment is possible because identity is not fixed, it is practiced. Pay your debts with action. Reclaim trust by doing what you said you would. The stranger you fear will approach you more readily when your ledger is balanced and your voice is consistent. Becoming is not a single event. It is the accumulation of tiny, deliberate acts that remodel a nervous system and orient attention toward a new identity. Rituals are not mystical. They are neurostructural. When you repeat an act at scale, it shapes your sense of self. A musician doesn't become a musician by reading about music. They become one by playing scales until the hands know the melody. The same principle applies to moral formation. Focus, courage. Choose 3 rituals that will mark the new you. A morning anchor for clarity, an afternoon threshold for deep work, an evening practice for honest inventory. The morning anchor could be 10 minutes of unedited journaling, plein sentence, about what truth you will honor that day. The threshold might be a 90-minute block of undistracted work with phone removed and a single outcome defined. The evening inventory is 5 minutes of noting one proof of the future self you kept. These are small, but their fidelity matters. Rituals should be scalable and non-negotiable. Begin with tiny commitments. You cannot use mood as an excuse to avoid. Don't say "I will write for an hour." Say "I will write 200 words." The brain tolerates when it wins. It builds momentum. As the ritual becomes habit, increase the load. That's how the nervous system learns that discomfort is survivable and productive. Another useful ritual, public unairy acts. Choose one micro-public commitment that nudges you into accountability. Post a short video of your progress weekly. Tell a trusted friend about one action you will take. Or set a small external deadline. Publicity isn't vanity. When well chosen, it leverages social cost to sustain the tough work. Design your environment for ritual success. Eye-level cues, pre-laid tools remove temptations. If you want to wake with clarity, set your journal on the bedside with a pen. If you want discipline with work, use a website blocker and a clear workspace. Remove friction for the acts you want and add friction for the acts you don't want. True courage is intimate and domestic. It shows up as the willingness to lose small things so you can have large things. It is the daily preference for long-term integrity over short-term ease. The sacredness of discomfort lies in its ability to purify purpose. You cannot become the person you fear without choosing regular discomfort. Start by redefining losses. When you give up something that cushions you from truth, an easy relationship, a flattering role, a habitual escape, you might register loss. But reframed, that loss is the down payment on a future integrity. By losing the smaller comfort you avoid, you buy the right to a life aligned with your deepest values. Courage is also practiced at scale. The person who tolerates small discomfort daily trains the body, the mind, and the soul for larger trials. Short exposures to manageable pain build tolerance, calm, and confidence. Examples: weekly cold exposure, regular hard conversations, a public small creative act. These are not heroic stunts. They are grit builders. Relational courage is crucial. Many remain small because they fear relational fallout. Telling a loved one an uncomfortable truth, setting a boundary, leaving a social space that drains you. These are acts that feel sacrificial but free you. The moral clarity gained from honest relationships far outweighs short relational ease. Sacred discomfort is not masochism. It is wise economy. It means choosing disciplined loss now for compounded dignity later. It is the refusal to be numbed into complacency by comfort. Finally, honor courage publicly. Not for applause, but to normalize the practice. When you model small courageous acts, you create permission structures for others. Courage grows socially. Your bravery, repeated modestly, ripples. The reunion is not a single epiphany. It's a set of moral and practical commitments. First, ongoing accountability. Choose one or two people who will keep your ledger honest. Not cheerleaders, but witnesses who will call you back to fidelity. Second, thresholds and sanctuaries. Build non-negotiable thresholds, daily rituals, and protect sanctuaries, weekly retreats, where the soul can realign. Third, practice repair publicly and privately. Failure will come. Announce small repairs, iterate, and move on. Fourth, maintain humility. The future self is not a crown. It is a responsibility. Let discipline be your habit, not your identity braggadocio. Finally, live for the next small thing. The reunion is not a rival. It's fidelity to the next choice. When you meet that other you, treat them kindly, but keep working. The person you feared is not a final destination, but a responsibility. You accept each day. The stranger in the mirror will become familiar if you live toward them. The cost is courage. The reward is a life that finally matches a truer self.